When the native population becomes a minority, when its language is pushed back, its traditions marginalized, and its values replaced, then the issue is no longer integration. It is the survival of our very own entire civilization. That is why I say it without any hesitation. Remigration is not an option, it is an absolute necessity.
We're going to start the ball rolling with Stefan Korte, who he's addressed us before, and he has he's the local leader where he lives of the AfD in Germany, and he worked in the Reichstag, for the Bundestag, as some people call it, for 7 years, and he's the author of Geopolitical Upheaval in Eastern Europe. So I'm going to hand you straight over to Stefan, and can you, if you need to ask him questions, can you see him later on when we're mingling and whatever? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Stefan Korte.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. First, allow me to thank the organizers of the conference, who year after year display great courage, steadfastness, and dedication. Under the most difficult circumstances, as we already know, they succeed every time and any time, anyway, in bringing this important gathering to life, giving us the opportunity to reflect upon what truly matters. Today, I wish to speak to you about the decline of values in Europe, which I did actually 5 years ago already, but things changed, and I would like to present to you a new project of mine which might be of interest to you as well. Well, but when we speak of the decline, we must first speak of the values themselves. Not those that can be measured on a bank statement, but those that are truly vital. The values that bind us together, give us direction, and ultimately hold the key to the survival of our civilizations. Values are the invisible order that guides our actions, shapes our thinking, and makes our coexistence possible. They are like the water to the fish, unnoticed while it is present, but in the absence of which means the end of its life. Likewise, we only recognize the importance of our values when they're gone. Human beings distinguish between material and spiritual values. Material values make our lives quite comfortable and provide external stability, like a warm home, a full table, and a sense of security. All these things are important, but they do not answer the question of meaning. And spiritual values, on the other hand, like truth, justice, beauty, loyalty, freedom, and dignity, give life its purpose and its direction. They lift us above mere instinct and make us truly civilized men and women. The thinkers of the antiquity already recognized this fundamental truth. Aristotle taught in his Nicomachean Ethics that virtues, values put into practice, are not innate but must be acquired through habit and discipline. For him, it was clear. Man is not born virtuous, he must become so through the polis, through community, and through the conscious cultivation of character. Plato went even deeper into the nature of values. In his famous allegory of the cave, he showed that most people see only the shadows of truth on the wall, but those who free themselves from their chains and step into the light of understanding perceive the eternal ideas, the good, the beautiful, and the true. For Plato, these ideas were not human inventions, but universal principles, cosmic orders, so to say, in which we can participate if we so choose. What Aristotle described as virtue and what Plato recognized as the idea of the good are precisely the values of which I would like to talk about today. The ancient Greeks already understood what we must relearn, that values are not arbitrary but follow an inner logic, that they cannot be decreed but must grow in the soul of man and in the culture of a people, and that a society without such values is doomed to decline, as Plato warned already in his Republic more than 2,000 years ago. Without values, humankind cannot endure. History itself bears witness to this truth. Without values, humanity would remain a mass of individuals driven by impulse, consumed by the moment, and prey to the stronger. It was the virtues that shaped from this mass a community capable of creating history. They enable the passage from the horde to the people, from a clan to nation, and gave rise to civilization and culture. Values are the bridge that unite past, present, and the future. When we honor the values of our ancestors, we bind ourselves to their history, their sacrifice, and their greatness. We embody those values in our own lives. We carry the strength of the past into the present and build the foundation of a living future. And when we pass these values to our children, we give them more than possessions. We give them an inner compass stronger than any external temptation. Dignity, freedom, decency, and moral integrity are not passing fashions. They are the firmest anchors of civilization. Yet, how painful is the contrast when we contrast with the reality of our own times, where Aristotle taught that the conscious cultivation of character, today the arbitrariness of the moment prevails. Where Plato called for the recognition of the true, the good, and the beautiful, today everything is relativized, leveled, and declared to be of equal worth. What for millennia was guarded as humanity's most precious inheritance is now carelessly cast aside. The virtues to which philosophers once devoted their lives are dismissed as outdated. The eternal truth that Plato raised into the realm of ideas are mocked as a subjective opinion. We live in an age where many are so conditioned that they are ashamed even to speak of virtue as though it were a relic of darker times. We are told it is not longer permitted to distinguish the beautiful from the ugly, the noble from the base, for such judgment would be discriminatory. Truth itself has been reduced to opinion dependent on whoever happens to speak. This development is, of course, no accident. It is the result of a systematic dismantling of all that generations before us built. As truth is replaced by relativism, justice by arbitrariness, beauty by vulgarity, freedom by control, and loyalty by indifference, there is little left to hold us in our society together. We risk becoming a mere collection of isolated individuals again, each alone, without belonging, without support, and without a future. And it is precisely this abyss that now opens before Europe. We see it in our cities, we experience it in our schools, we hear it in the media. Everywhere that values once gave strength and structure, indifference, arbitrariness, and contempt for our own inheritance now spread. So, what are the reasons for this catastrophe? First and foremost, we are facing the consequences of misguided politics. We all know that. Our political elites have ceased to act in the service of their people. Instead, they serve ideologies and transnational interests. Driven by motives as base as greed and vanity, they have forgotten that their foremost duty is to provide their nation with protection, stability, and of course a secure future. Rather than assuming responsibility, they take refuge in fashionable buzzwords like diversity, openness, and sustainability. Words that once carried a noble meaning have been hollowed out and turned against their original purpose. Today, they serve not unity, but dissolution of our inherited identities. Diversity no longer signifies the beauty of Europe's many cultures, but an aimless multiculturalism without cohesion or direction. According to Eurostat, in cities such as Brussels, Malmö, or Marseille, more than 40% of the population already have no European background anymore. In London and Birmingham, too, entire districts have lost their historic identity and character. Openness no longer means hospitality, but the abandonment of our borders and the surrender of our sovereignty. In 2022 alone, more than 330,000 irregular border crossings into the European Union were recorded. And here in Britain, despite the Brexit, tens of thousands continue to cross the channel illegally every year. Sustainability no longer means caring for creation, but has become a convenient pretext for paralyzing industry, undermining prosperity, and driving people into dependency. Germany, for instance, has brought entire sectors, such as the aluminum production, to the brink of collapse through its so-called energy transition, costing tens of thousands of jobs. And in Britain, misguided net zero policies now threaten steel, automotive, and agricultural alike. Where politics once sought to preserve the nation's inheritance and build upon it for future generations, it now hastens its suppression and in some places, its erasure altogether. The same pattern is evident in education. Schools have become places of re-education. They no longer shape self-confident Europeans, but rootless generations, fluent in slogans, yet ignorant of their own spiritual inheritance. Instead of classical literature, pupils are offered gender workshops. Instead of philosophy and history, a moral catechism that bears little relation to genuine education. Universities, once bastion of free inquiry, have turned into arenas of ideological conformity. Many young people no longer know where they come from, yet they are utterly convinced that their own moral superiority. Rather than educating our youth in language, history, and philosophy, rather than acquainting them with the great minds of Europe, such as Goethe, Schiller, Shakespeare, Bach, Elgar, Purcell, we are witnessing a systematic impoverishment of curricula. And this is not confined to Germany or the United Kingdom, but it can be observed across almost the whole of Europe. History is no longer taught as a source of understanding, but truncated, distorted, or ideologically reinterpreted. Literary masterpieces such as Faust, Hamlet, Parsifal, or Dante's Divine Comedy, works that shaped entire generations, are replaced by arbitrary texts devoid of depth, beauty, and elevation. Language, the highest expression of our identity, is being diluted by slang and hollow jargon. Where once there was precision, grace, and power of expression, there is now a kind of verbal gibberish that elevates neither mind nor soul. The result is devastating. Generations of young Europeans have grown up without knowledge of their roots and are therefore unwilling or even unable to defend them. A survey by the Kerber Foundation in 2023 revealed that only 32% of German pupils could name the year of the fall of the Berlin Wall, and fewer than 40% knew who Martin Luther was. A youth that knows neither the songs of its fathers nor the heroes who inspired them, that sees its own history only as a burden and as a guilt, precisely because that's what they are taught in classroom, will inevitably fall prey to any ideology that offers them a sense of certainty. What begins in the classroom as the impoverishment of knowledge continues in the shaping of public opinion. The media, once hailed as the fourth estate and as a critical corrective for democracy, have in large part become the mouthpieces of a toxic ideology. Their true role should be to scrutinize the powerful, to expose wrongdoing, to denounce corruption, and give voice to the people. Instead, we see the opposite. Scandals go unreported, uncomfortable questions are avoided, and government narratives are uncritically repeated. In place of checking those in power, the media now serves them. All this is accompanied by a disturbing readiness to surrender the very role of watchdog that democracy actually requires. This moral inversion is itself one of the clearest symptoms of our decline in values. When the media cease to seek truth, and when reporting no longer informs but instructs, and when the so-called fourth estate surrenders its independence, the entire balance of democracy begins to collapse. Ladies and gentlemen, the media are obviously no longer mirrors of reality, but filters of perception. They no longer show what is, but only what we are meant to see. This is not a free press, it is the communication arm of an emerging totalitarianism. Nowhere is the manipulation of public perception more visible than in one issue which fundamentally determines Europe's future and yet is systematically downplayed. Of course, I'm talking about the uncontrolled mass migration. Anyone who dares today to criticize this policy, anyone who raises the immense problems created by unregulated immigration, is no longer heard as a responsible citizen, but branded by the same media as a racist or a right-wing extremist. Millions of people have come to Europe in the last decade. By the end of 2023, more than 44 million residents within the EU had been born outside of our borders. More than the population of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia together. In 2023 alone, over 3.7 million first resident permits were issued in the EU, more than ever before. Too often, these newcomers arrive from cultural spheres whose values are diametrically opposed to ours. Many are neither willing nor able to integrate into our society. They bring not only a different language, but entirely different notions of family, gender roles, religion, and the relation between the individual and community. Instead of demanding that they adapt to our values, we are told by our politicians and the media to abandon ours. Our celebrations are being neutralized, our symbols removed from public space, and even the cross itself, which for more than 1,000 years has been the symbol of our spiritual foundation. We see this all over Europe. Christian symbols are attacked and removed in the name of inclusivity, whilst sensitivity and tolerance are demanded only for others, never for our own traditions. This decay is not only visible in politics, but also in the words of those who claim to speak for equality. Let me give you one striking example from Italy. In the run-up of the elections in Tuscany this year, a left-wing politician who for years presented herself as the voice for equality, anti-discrimination, and social justice openly declared the following, that whiteness must be dismantled. It is a political act and an urgent collective practice. Let us be clear. This is nothing less than an open hostility towards the European majority population. It's not aimed at correcting injustices or overcoming individual prejudices. It is a direct attack on an entire ethnic identity, on the very cultural foundation of Europe itself. Anyone, please. It gives me time. Sorry, but I catch the flu and pretty dry in my mouth. So where were we? All right. Political act, go on. Okay. Anyone who declares, now I got it, Anyone who declares that millions of people are a problem simply because of their heritage is not fighting racism, they are practicing it in its purest and most aggressive form. And such rhetoric is highly dangerous. It stigmatizes the native population, portrays them as illegitimate in their own homelands, and prepares the ground for exclusion and hostility against native Europeans themselves. Where are these champions of tolerance when it comes to the feelings of native Europeans, which are wounded every single day? And sadly, it does not end with feelings that are wounded. Women are assaulted, knife attacks occur, and even children are being murdered. And such politically correct attitudes do not foster integration, but disintegration. They encourage the rise of parallel societies in which European laws and norms scarcely apply, because clans, mosque associations, and or religious authorities now dictate the rules in these areas. Entire districts have become enclaves in which our Western heritage is not merely ignored, but openly despised. In many London boroughs, as in Berlin-Neukölln, the majority of children no longer speak the national language at home. The consequences are felt every day. Germany's police statistic, for example, for 2023 recorded 2.2 million suspects. Particularly alarming in their case is the number of non-German suspects rose by more than 13% over the previous year. Violence, contempt for women, and religious fanaticism are no longer marginal phenomena. They are the daily realities in many of our cities. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, the decisive question arises. What happens to a people if not only abandons its borders, its culture, and its identity, but also forgets its very reproduction in the name of woke ideological pressures? Europe has suffered for decades from a dramatic demographic shift. Our birth rates lie far below the replacement level. At the same time, we face rapid aging and massive immigration from alien cultural spheres. The outcome is a creeping transformation that is visible not only in statistics, but in entire neighborhoods. When the native population becomes a minority, when its language is pushed back, its traditions marginalized, and its values replaced, then the issue is no longer integration. It is the survival of our very own entire civilization. That is why I say it without any hesitation. Remigration is not an option, it is an absolute necessity. Those who reject our values, who despise or actively fight our society, illegals and criminals cannot remain a permanent part of Europe. They have to leave our continent, and there can be no compromise on this. Remigration is no taboo. It is the necessary counterweight to decades of lost control. Remigration means simply restoring the natural order. The ethnic preservation of our civilization must be our main priority for the years to come. This requires policies that strengthen families, that once again encourage marriage and children, that give young people confidence to carry life forward, and that restores faith in Christianity. Only in this way can we ensure that the peoples of Europe do not vanish into an undefined mass, but preserve their individuality, their culture, and, most important, their dignity. Politics and the media deliberately downplay these facts because the truth would all too clearly expose their own failures. Yet the decline of values does not stop at the borders of our nations. It weakens Europe's position in the world. For a culture that abandons its values of independence, responsibility, and strength also forfeits its ability to act abroad. We see this first in the energy policy. For decades, Europe placed its self-independence first on Russian gas, Today, scarcely less on American liquefied natural gas. With Donald Trump back in the White House, a president who views energy as a hard geopolitical bargaining chip, who is only interested in making deals, the lesson is clear. Whoever forgets the value of independence will pay in vulnerability to blackmail. The same decay is evident in defense. A Europe that has downsized its armies and relies almost entirely on NATO, which is, we all know that, nothing more but a proxy force for the US, has surrendered its capacity for self-assertion. Without the United States, many states would not be defensible, and rivals could read this as an open invitation to undermine them. The war in Ukraine shows the problem even more intensely. Not only does it expose Europe's military dependency, it also lays bare the disunity with Washington over aims, costs, and perspectives. The United States pursues its own interest, whilst Europe pays the price, economically, socially, and geopolitically. A continent divided on central questions cannot raise a strong voice in the world. Technologically, too, we have fallen behind. Instead of setting our own standards, we adopt those of the United States or China. The value of the progress has been replaced by the dogma of ideological regulations, leaving us ever more dependent. And finally, migration once more. It destabilized not only our societies, but also our geopolitical position. A Europe eroded from within, whose great cities are shaped by parallel societies, can never speak outwardly with one voice. But maybe this is exactly what certain people are trying to achieve. All this shows the decline of values is not an internal side issue, it is the very cause of our geopolitical weakness as well. Whoever loses their values loses the capacity for self-assertion. And whoever loses the capacity for self-assertion will not be respected in the 21st century world, but reduced to a mere pawn between the United States, China, Russia, and other powers. In short, what we are witnessing is nothing less than a frontal assault on Europe. A continent once proud of its culture, freedom, greatness, and strength now looks into the mirror with uncertainty. Europe, once the beacon of civilization, has become a drifting vessel, close to sinking in the storm of relativism and self-dissolution. But let me assure you, what has been brought about, decisions can also be undone by decisions. What has been weakened us can be removed. What has been taken from us can be regained. If only we find the courage to seize the helm and turn this ship around. That requires courage, it requires willpower, and above all, however, it requires love. Love for our nations and our people. This love is not a sentimental feeling, it is the force that carries us when ideologies collapse, when systems fail, and when entire societies falter. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to take the helm and set course ourselves, away from self-abandonment towards a future worth living, shaped by our own ideals and the legacy of our forefathers. A Europe that once again looks to the future with pride, with confidence, because it knows who it is. It is time for a U-turn for Europe. And at this point in my speech, I wish to present to you a new project, a new institution that is the result of more than 10 years of active participation in political life on federal, local levels, and countless travels across our beautiful continent. Its name is U-turn for Europe. U-turn for Europe is not merely just a catchy name, it is a call, it is a wake-up call and a promise. The promise to no longer accept the decline of our continent and our nations, but to act. This project unites heart and mind, culture and strategy, emotion and analysis. It is the turning point that Europe so urgently needs. This project rests on two pillars. The first pillar is culture, and our maxim is quite simple. Culture is identity, identity is life, and life is the future. Through culture, we reach people not with tables and statistics, but with heart and soul, with art, with music, with literature. An example is our pilot project, Ode to Europe, which is already in the making. Professional musicians and actors preparing a musical play which we will tour with across Europe. We will show people again how wonderful their history, their art, and their nations truly are. Each stage performance will be tailored to the host nation, giving them the strongest connection to their own culture and identity, while at the same time highlighting their ties to other nations, thus fostering mutual understanding and solidarity. We begin with 5 countries, 5 voices, 5 reflections of our continent. Vivaldi, Dante, Hugo, Fauré, Tchaikovsky, Mozart, Beethoven, Goethe, and from the British side, Shakespeare, Milton, Purcell, and Elgar. They all speak to us across centuries. They remind us that Europe is not an administrative act of Brussels, but a spiritual space where beauty, truth, and dignity have their home. Thank you. The second pillar is our think tank, the Institution for European Sovereignty and Cultural Identity. Here, we bring together knowledge and strategy. Here, analyses are produced that do not gather dust on shelves, but serve the movements, the parties, the citizens, who want to reshape Europe. When we say we analyze, we mean we put our finger on the wound. We show where migration overwhelms society, where education systems erode our values, where media provides narratives instead of the truth, where supranational institutions rob citizens of their voice. I'm sorry, I have bloody flu. All right. And certainly, we do not stop at criticizing. We link structures across Europe. We create a network that expands all over the continent. We develop concepts and solutions for another path. A clear migration policy that focuses strictly on remigration. Educational programs that reintroduce children to Goethe, Schiller, Dickens, Shakespeare, and so on. Strategies for a sovereign continent that controls its own resources, its own energy, and its own borders. At present, people from 5 different nations are already working together on this project within the think tank. What makes us different? Well, not the coughing, obviously. All right. We combine the sublime with the practical. We recall what made Europe great and translate it back into action. Other right-wing think tanks, which are existing, very good that far, analyze politics and produce solutions based on their focus. That is good so far. Other cultural initiatives perform plays, unfortunately, most coming from the left side, which is not so good. But only we unite the 2 aspects that need to be reconnected. The spiritual with the strategic, the beautiful with the effective, the noble with the necessary. In this way, we stand on both fronts at the same time. We create a cultural rerouting and connect it with concrete political strategies. U-Turn for Europe is not abstract. We create spaces and tools for people to become active. We organize conferences where the peoples of Europe share their experience. For instance, a European Values Conference planned for spring 2026 in Vienna, everybody's invited, where each nation sets out how value decay affects its own country. I'm sorry, I catch the flu and it's really getting worse. We develop educational initiatives that restore pride in language and history to children and young people. We support them in learning classical instruments or singing, and thereby reconnecting them with their roots already at an early age. We create stage projects, concerts, readings, and give in Europe a new yet old face, proud, clear, and alive. It has not been for a long time. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, why this project needs all of you. U-Turn for Europe does not live from the few, but from the many. From artists who raise their voices, if they can, From teachers who dare to read the great poets in class again, from citizens who stand for our values in local councils and in school boards, from politicians who take up our analysis and turn them into programs, from journalists who have the courage again to write the truth, from every single person who refuses to stand by whilst Europe declines, and with it our values and our future. Everyone can be part of U-Turn for Europe. So why is this project actually necessary? Yeah, well, because the clock in Europe has already struck 5 minutes past midnight. Our continent has reached a point where the old methods no longer work, and I'm talking about experience here. Appeals alone don't work anymore. Protests alone, party programs, political slogans will no longer suffice. Indoctrination through corrupt media, manipulative education systems, and self-serving elites has advanced way too far. What we need is a cultural counter-movement that grips hearts and minds, a fire that blazes and spreads and becomes an unstoppable force. A commitment that restores courage and dignity. And that is precisely what U-Turn for Europe is. U-Turn for Europe is a movement for a peaceful renewal rooted in tradition, identity, and love for our homelands. It is the platform that reconnects culture and politics in a way and in a sense that have not been seen before. It is the tool that turns spectators into shapers once again. But another question comes up. Why do we place such decisive emphasis on the cultural component? The answer is quite simple. Because culture is our most powerful weapon. Not on the battlefield, but in the hearts and the minds of the people. It provides us with inexhaustible ammunition. Songs that carry our history, poems that express our longing, images that preserve beauty, rituals that give us stability. Through culture, we transform helplessness into action, doubt into pride, alienation into a strong community. We revive awareness of our own identity. And that is one of the most important tasks of our time. Precisely because the elites know the power of this weapon. Culture is under such massive attack today. That is why classical texts are being are being removed from curricula. That is why folk art is being ridiculed as mere folklore. This is why traditions are replaced by artificial events with no link what is truly ours. These elites in politics and media and in the culture industry know a people robbed of its roots becomes compliant. Strip people of their songs and you take away their voice. Rob them of their history and you rob them of their confidence. Relativize their values and you leave them naked and defenseless before the storm of times. These elites fear nothing more than a people aware of its own cultural strength. For a person who has read Goethe, listened to Bach, and sung the hymns of his fathers can no longer be manipulated, neither by shallow entertainment, nor by vogue ideologies, nor by a constant suggestion that the native is worthless. And it is precisely here that U-Turn for Europe kicks in. We say enough of cultural self-denial. We draw upon the inexhaustible source that no one can actually take away from us. We give back to the people what is rightfully theirs, their poets, their thinkers, their composers, their language, their rituals. By this we become unaccessible, for no ideology, no globalist narrative, no political propaganda can erase a culture that is lived, that is sung, that is passed on and carried with pride by their people. But be aware, whoever controls culture controls the future. But the future is not some distant fate. It is decided here and now. Through our actions, through our courage, we bear responsibility not only for ourselves, but also for our children and for those who come after us, and who have the right to a Europe that is still their Europe. And at this movement, and at this moment, when we either continue to drift towards dissolution or we have the possibility to change our course. And U-turn for Europe is merely the beginning. It is the voice that says, enough is enough. It is the heart that proclaims, I'm still beating. It is the will that declares, I will not back down. And together we will turn around and reclaim our beloved Europe. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.